Hey everyone, AniMonster here, and welcome back to Mostly Monster Thoughts. For those of you who don't know what this is, I'm really bad at collecting my thoughts at the very end of video games, so I just kind of set this off to the side as both a review and a thought process on games that I've recently played. Today it's going to be Little Nightmares. To start off, I always do mechanics first, and then I do stories second, so that if you're just looking for a review of the game, figure out if you want to play it or not, you don't have to have any of the story spoiled. If you're looking for just the story parts of it, my thoughts on what all happened, go ahead and jump to the timestamp. But to start off, I kind of wanted to talk about something that kept bothering me throughout the entire freaking game, which was the angle of the game. That probably sounds really weird, but it was not quite a side-scroller, not quite an over-the-shoulder game. It's a really bad way to say it, but basically they had an angle like you were in a shelf, which I really liked from an aesthetic standpoint, but from a mechanic standpoint it made some of the puzzles really hard because the depth perception was kind of off. Maybe it was supposed to make the puzzles harder, I don't know. I just don't know if I necessarily liked it. It wasn't so bad for me personally that it kept me from playing it all the way through. I did in fact finish it and it was a very good game, but the angle was definitely very weird. It would be something I would say is a lot of the problems with the game, probably. But kind of on the subject of the puzzles, though, I did feel like some of them were a bit more convoluted than I thought they should be. I could also just be dumb, but there were definitely some where I felt like I couldn't find the solution without stumbling upon it on accident, and there were times where I felt like I was taking far, far too long to figure out what I was doing. Again, I could just be dumb. Though I will admit that despite the puzzles being a little wonky, especially towards the end, their way of doing tutorials was actually very, very well done. For those of you who don't know, Extra Credits actually did a episode on what makes a good tutorial. I'll have to go see if I can find it. It'll probably be in the description. But the big thing about tutorials is that they can be very, very obtrusive. They can break the flow of gameplay very, very easily. I didn't feel like the tutorials in Little Nightmares did that. I actually thought they were very well implemented because if you know what you're doing, they don't show up. If you need help, if it becomes obvious that that you're missing a mechanic that makes you move forward, it pops up at the bottom of the screen, just this very nice, it's not hard to see, but it doesn't like glare in your face. The most obvious example I can give was there was a running puzzle, but I didn't know you could run. And after a couple of attempts, they were like, hey, press this button and that's how you run. Was able to complete the puzzle perfectly after that, and it was the only tutorial that I really needed. There were times where I felt like they probably might have been able to check if you are doing something and it's just timing that you're working on. Because I did get a tutorial pop-up at some point when I was doing the mechanic that they said I could do. But oh well, can't win them all. As far as the atmosphere and the music, I love them both. It was very well done. It's very reminiscent. I'm fairly certain it's a Japanese created game from the aesthetic and the way that it's presented and all of that, where America tends to rely a lot on jump scares. Japanese horror tends to be a bit more focused on atmosphere and tension and silence, I guess is the best way to describe it. And all of those are very present throughout the entire game. The atmosphere is amazing. Towards the end, you definitely start to see like more Japanese style buildings and structures and what have you. For the music and atmosphere alone, I would suggest this game. Very well done. Granted, the gameplay is only about 3 hours long. I didn't find all of the secrets, but I did find a decent amount of them, and the secrets aren't necessarily so far hidden that you would get much more gameplay than the 3 hours that it took me. Again, that was also with me stumbling around a lot on some of the puzzles, so give or take. From here on out, I will be talking about spoilers. If you're not looking for those, this is probably where you check out. You have been warned. To start off, I mentioned this towards the end of the last video, but the through line with the growling from 6, I believe her name is, was so well done. It was phenomenal. I loved it. This idea that it was a story mechanic. I originally didn't think it was really much a mechanic, just a story moment, but no, it was definitely a mechanic because you were basically forced to eat whatever you found during those moments. And you couldn't change what you found. It was someone giving you meat, it was someone trapping you with meat, it was you picking up something that was trapped, which resulted in probably the best moment in the game with when I was blown away and I was horrified. It has some of my favorite facial expressions actually in that moment of when you start eating the little white hat guy. I really like those guys. They were really cute. For a game with no dialogue, for a game with very unsaturated colors, those guys were adorable and I love them. I'm still really mad that she decided to eat one's face off. It wasn't quite as horrific when she ate the lady's face off because I was already prepared for it and I knew it was going to happen. However, the whole shadow thing, which was already really well done for the lady, oh god. Like, just thinking about it kind of like, gives me shivers. But kind of going off of that, the lady herself was actually was kind of spectacular. I loved how different she looked, first off, from the rest of the cast, because the rest of the cast are kind of these blubberous, wrinkly folds everywhere kind of characters. And then she's just here in this, like, sleek kimono with, like, the white mask and the oh my god, the humming. Oh, the humming terrified me. And then the way that she moved, how she could just and was gone. I loved it. I felt like she was probably the best monster that you dealt with in the entire thing. And I loved the whole mirror thing where she had broken all of the mirrors, but you find the one that's still usable. And it kind of made me wonder if I absorbed her power at the end. Does that mean that I now have the problem with light, or am I different because of the raincoat, or what? I don't know what's going on there. Though I think it's interesting that she's the only one to have like supernatural powers as opposed to all the other monsters that were just kind of weird and creepy. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were creepy, and I think out of all of them, the chefs were probably lowest on the creep factor list because they were just kind of weird to look at, and their death animations were always a little wonky. I don't know, there were times with theirs where I couldn't tell if it was scripted like that or if it was kind of a glitch bug feature. But then Arms was horrifying because of the fact that he was the first one you saw, and you had to be careful because if you made too much noise, and that was kind of introducing getting spotted without having to worry about actually getting spotted. The guests of the guest house were also interesting, mostly because they reminded me a lot of No Face during the chase scene of Spirited Away. Again, highly suggest that movie if you have not seen it. Really good movie. Though I do question, there were other kids in the complex, and I'm not sure if I'm the only one of my size, or if there are other kids that are my size and just trying not to get eaten, as I assume that's what their end result is. But I'm not entirely sure. It looked like a lot of them were getting packed up, and that's why there was the entire thing of shoes down there. Ooh, that level. Really reminded me of Amnesia. Very well done again. But I do question why I'm the only one who decided to escape. I want to know what makes me different. I'm wondering if that'll get explored in the DLC or if it's just kind of meant to be left ambiguous. I guess we'll see. I do intend to play the DLC, just playing a different game before then. It's really all I have. I'm gonna wrap it up here. So thank you so much for joining me on my little ramble of thoughts. And until next time, this is AniMonster, signing off. Have a good night.